A shy woman fixed her dress on the window, unaware that her boss was watching from inside. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start. The August heat pressed against Chicago's concrete jungle like a heavy blanket, turning the morning commute into a test of endurance. Janelle Brooks hurried along Michigan Avenue, her cream linen dress catching the breeze as she weaved through the crowd. The fabric had seemed perfect when she'd chosen it that morning, professional, yet comfortable enough for the creative department's latest project presentation. Now, though, the hem kept creeping up with every step, making her increasingly self-conscious. Checking her rose gold watch, a graduation gift from her grandmother, Janelle realized she still had 20 minutes before the meeting. Just enough time to collect herself and review her notes one last time. She slowed her pace, looking for a quiet spot to regain her composure. That's when she saw it. A sleek, black Audi A8, its tinted windows offering a perfect mirror in the early morning light. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, Janelle stepped closer to the vehicle, using its reflection to adjust her dress. The material had bunched awkwardly around her hips, and she tugged it carefully back into place, smoothing the wrinkles with practiced movements. Inside the car, Matthew Hale sat frozen, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. He'd been reviewing quarterly reports on his tablet, seeking a moment of solitude before his 9 a.m. board meeting when movement caught his eye. Now he watched through the one-way glass as one of his newer employees, the quiet one from Creative, whose presentations always caught his attention, adjusted her clothing with careful precision, completely unaware of his presence. There was something striking about her unself-consciousness, the way she carried herself when she thought no one was looking. Matthew had noticed her before, of course. Janelle Brooks had joined the company 6 months ago, and while she rarely spoke up in larger meetings, her work spoke volumes. Her designs had a depth that stood out, an authenticity that resonated with clients in ways their competitors couldn't match. But this was different. This wasn't the professional facade she maintained in the office. This was Janelle unguarded, her expression shifting between concentration and slight frustration as she worked to perfect her appearance. A strand of dark hair had escaped her neat bun, and she tucked it back with a gentle touch that made something twist in Matthew's chest. He should look away. That would be the appropriate thing to do. Instead, he found himself mesmerized by the small rituals of her morning routine. The way she squared her shoulders, checked her lipstick, practiced what looked like a presentation smile. There was vulnerability there, but also strength, a quiet determination that he recognized from her work. Janelle stepped back from the car, giving her reflection one final assessment. Perfect. Or at least, as perfect as it was going to get. She reached into her leather tote bag, extracted a small notebook, and began walking toward the building's entrance, her heels clicking confidently against the sidewalk. Matthew watched her go, suddenly aware that he'd been holding his breath. He set down his coffee, mind already spinning with the implications of what had just happened. In the 6 years since he'd taken over as CEO, he'd worked hard to maintain professional boundaries, to be respected rather than liked. It was easier that way, cleaner. But something about this moment, this accidental glimpse into someone else's private world, had cracked that carefully constructed facade. He gathered his things, trying to focus on the day ahead. Board meetings, budget reviews, the endless parade of decisions that came with running a company. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Janelle's reflection in the window, to the genuine smile that had played across her lips when she'd finally gotten everything just right. The elevator was crowded when he entered the building. Executives and assistants pressed together in uncomfortable proximity. He caught a glimpse of cream linen at the back of the car, but instead of his usual nod of acknowledgement, He found himself studying the pattern of lights playing across the ceiling, suddenly unsure of where to look or how to act. As the elevator ascended, Matthew made a decision. He would forget this morning's encounter, file it away as one of those strange moments that sometimes happen in a city of millions. He would maintain his professional distance, focus on running his company, and absolutely not think about the way Janelle Brooks had hummed softly to herself as she'd adjusted her dress in his car window. By the time he reached his floor, he'd almost convinced himself it would be that simple. Almost. But as he walked into his office, his assistant trailing behind him with the day's schedule, Matthew caught himself glancing toward the creative department's wing, and for the first time in years, he wondered if maybe it was time to take a more active interest in their current projects. Just for the sake of good management, of course. Nothing more than that. Nothing at all. The creative department buzzed with its usual morning energy as Janelle settled into her workspace. Her dual monitors flickered to life, displaying the presentation she'd perfected over the past week. Around her, the open-plan office filled with the gentle clatter of keyboards and murmured conversations about deadlines and design choices. "Someone's looking extra polished today," Regina Chen, her closest work friend, commented as she rolled her chair over. "Big meeting?" Janelle smoothed her dress for the 100th time that morning. "The Hartley account presentation. You know, the one that could either make or break the whole quarter?" She tried to keep her voice steady, but anxiety crept in at the edges. Regina squeezed her shoulder. "You've got this. Your designs are brilliant, and even Mr. Ice King won't be able to deny it." Mr. Ice King was the office nickname for Matthew Hale. Janelle had never used it herself. Something about it felt unfair, though she couldn't explain why. Yes, he could be intimidating, with his sharp suits and sharper critiques, but she'd noticed other things too. The way he always credited team members by name when projects succeeded, how he remembered small details from previous presentations months later. "Speaking of," Regina's voice dropped to a whisper, "look who's making another surprise visit to our humble corner of the kingdom." Janelle glanced up to see Matthew Hale striding through the creative department, his presence causing a ripple of straightened postures and hastily minimized social media tabs. He moved with purpose, as always, but something seemed different today. His usual beeline to the department head's office took an unexpected detour, straight to her desk. "Ms. Brooks," he said, and Janelle felt every eye in the office turn their way. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Mr. Hale." She stood, thankful that she'd fixed her dress earlier. "Was there something you needed?" He paused, and for a moment Janelle could have sworn she saw uncertainty flicker across his features. But that couldn't be right. Matthew Hale didn't do uncertainty. "I wanted to discuss your presentation for the Hartley account," he said finally. "Perhaps we could review it in the small conference room. 10 minutes of your time." Regina shot her a wide-eyed look that clearly said, "Since when does the CEO do pre-meeting reviews?" "Of course," Janelle replied, gathering her tablet and trying to project confidence she didn't feel. As she followed him to the conference room, she could hear the whispered conversation sprouting in their wake. The small conference room felt even smaller with just the two of them. Matthew closed the door, and Janelle became acutely aware of every detail. The faint scent of his cologne, the way sunlight caught the silver at his temples, the unusual tension in his normally fluid movements. "Your previous presentations have shown remarkable insight," he began, leaning against the conference table rather than taking a seat. "I've been particularly impressed by your attention to human elements in design." Janelle blinked. Was Matthew Hale giving her a compliment? "Thank you, sir. I believe good design should tell a story." "Yes, exactly." He straightened, running a hand through his dark hair in a gesture that seemed almost nervous. "That's actually why I wanted to speak with you. The Hartley account isn't Just another client. They're old money, traditional, resistant to change. We need to convince them that innovation doesn't mean losing their identity. Understanding dawned. You're worried my designs might be too progressive for them. No, he said quickly, too quickly. No, I think your perspective is exactly what they need, but I want you to be prepared. They can be challenging. Janelle studied him, trying to reconcile this almost protective version of Matthew with the stern CEO she thought she knew. Mr. Hale, why are you really here? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He opened his mouth, closed it, then smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Would you believe me if I said I just had a good feeling about your work? Actually, yes, Janelle surprised herself by saying. You've always been fair in your assessments, even when they're critical. Something shifted in the air between them, a moment of genuine connection that made Janelle's heart skip. Matthew took a step closer, and she caught a glimpse of that same uncertainty she'd noticed earlier, now mixed with something else she couldn't quite name. Ms. Brooks, Janelle, he started, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. The door swung open, and Lauren from HR burst in. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. The Hartley team is here early. They're waiting. In the main conference room, the moment shattered. Matthew stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place so smoothly that Janelle almost wondered if she'd imagined its absence. We should go. Ms. Brooks, are you ready? Janelle gathered her composure, ignoring the curious look Lauren was giving them both. Yes, sir, always. As they walked to the main conference room, Janelle couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. She just wasn't sure what, or whether she was ready to find out. Behind her, Matthew Hale adjusted his tie and tried very hard not to think about cream-colored dresses and morning light and the way Janelle Brooks somehow managed to look both completely professional and utterly enchanting when she was proving him wrong. The Hartley team sat like a row of judges at the far end of the conference table. 3 men in expensive suits, their faces set in expressions of polite skepticism. Between them, a younger woman in a tailored blazer tapped her pen against a leather portfolio, her eyes sharp and evaluating. Janelle stood before them, her presentation displayed on the wall-length screen behind her. She could feel Matthew's presence at the other end of the room, but she forced herself not to look his way. Instead, she took a deep breath and began. When Charles Hartley founded your company in 1927, he didn't just create a business, he created a legacy. Janelle clicked to the first slide, showing a black and white photograph of the original Hartley building. For nearly a century, that legacy has been built on trust, tradition, and unwavering quality. Today, I'm going to show you how we can honor that legacy while embracing the future. The young woman, Alexandra Hartley, Charles's great-granddaughter and newly appointed creative director, leaned forward slightly. Janelle recognized the spark of interest and pressed on. Her presentation flowed seamlessly, each slide building on the last. She showed them how their classic logo could evolve while maintaining its core elements, how their traditional color palette could take on new life in digital spaces. But it was when she reached the centerpiece of her proposal that the energy in the room shifted. This is Thomas Carroll, Janelle said, displaying a photograph of an elderly man in a well-worn suit. He bought his first Hartley watch in 1962. 63 years later, he still winds it every morning. She clicked to the next slide, showing the same man with his granddaughter. And this is Mia, his granddaughter, checking the time on her smartwatch. 2 generations, 2 different approaches to time itself, but what they share is the desire for quality, for something that lasts. From his position near the door, Matthew watched as Janelle wove her story. She was transforming before his eyes, her usual reserve replaced by quiet confidence. This was her element, and she commanded it beautifully. "Our proposal isn't about changing who you are," Janelle continued. "It's about showing the world that Hartley's commitment to excellence transcends time itself. We're not suggesting you abandon tradition. We're offering you a chance to create new ones." The presentation concluded with a series of mock-ups showing how Hartley's brand could exist seamlessly across multiple platforms while maintaining its distinctive character. When Janelle finished speaking, the silence in the room felt charged with possibility. Alexandra Hartley was the first to speak. "Miss Brooks, how did you find Mr. Carroll?" "Actually, he found us," Janelle replied. "When we began researching Hartley's history, we posted a request for customer stories on several watch collector forums. Mr. Carroll was one of dozens who responded. Every person we spoke to had a Hartley story, a watch passed down through generations, a special occasion marked by a Hartley timepiece. Your brand isn't just about watches, it's about moments that matter." The older executives exchanged glances. One of them, Harold Werner, according to the brief, cleared his throat. "It's certainly a modern approach." "It's brilliant," Alexandra cut in. "It's exactly what we need." She turned to Matthew. "Mr. Hale, you've been quiet. What are your thoughts?" Matthew straightened, and Janelle finally allowed herself to look at him directly. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. "I believe," he said slowly, "that Ms. Brooks has demonstrated precisely why we assigned her to this project. She understands that innovation doesn't have to come at the expense of tradition. She's shown us how to bridge past and future without compromising either." The meeting concluded with handshakes and promises of follow-up discussions. As the Hartley team filed out, Alexandra lingered. "Ms. Brooks, I'd love to discuss this further. Perhaps over lunch next week?" After Alexandra left, Janelle began. Gathering her materials, her hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline wore off. She was so focused on collecting her papers that she didn't notice Matthew had stayed behind until he spoke. "That was exceptional work." His voice was soft, meant only for her. Janelle looked up, surprised to find him standing closer than she expected. "Thank you, Mr. Hale. I hoped it would resonate with them." "Please," he said, "call me Matthew, at least when we're not in front of clients." The invitation to informality hung between them, significant and a little dangerous. Janelle hesitated, then offered a small smile. "Thank you, Matthew." He reached past her to gather a stray document, his arm brushing hers. The contact was brief but electric, sending a shiver down her spine. When she met his eyes, she saw her own reaction mirrored there. The moment stretched, taut, with unspoken possibilities. Then a group of executives walked past the conference room, their voices breaking the spell. Matthew stepped back, adjusting his cuffs, a nervous gesture she was beginning to recognize. "You should expect to see more high-profile projects coming your way, Ms. Brooks. Talent like yours shouldn't be hidden." "Janelle," she corrected, feeling bold. "If I'm calling you Matthew—" His smile was worth the risk. "Janelle, then." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I take the elevator from the parking garage at 8:45 most mornings, in case you ever want to discuss future projects." With that, he was gone, leaving Janelle to wonder if the CEO of her company had just invited her to accidentally on purpose share his elevator, and why the thought made her heart race more than any presentation ever could. At 8:43 a.m., Janelle stood in the parking garage, pretending to check emails on her phone. She'd spent 20 minutes that morning convincing herself not to come early, that sharing an elevator with the CEO wasn't worth rearranging her schedule. Yet here she was, 2 minutes ahead of time, her heart doing a complicated dance in her chest. The garage was quiet, except for the distant sound of traffic and the click of her heels as she shifted her weight. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a deep blue pantsuit that made her feel both powerful and feminine, Not that she was trying to impress anyone, definitely not. At 8:44 she heard footsteps approaching, familiar footsteps with the confident rhythm she'd somehow already memorized. Janelle kept her eyes on her phone, though she hadn't registered a single word on the screen for the past minute. "Good morning, Janelle." She looked up to find Matthew, standing closer than she'd expected, his presence filling her awareness. He wore a charcoal suit today, the color bringing out the silver in his hair. His tie was the same shade of blue as her suit, a coincidence that felt significant somehow. "Good morning, Matthew." His name still felt new on her tongue, a small thrill of intimacy. They stepped into the elevator together, and Janelle noticed that despite there being plenty of room, neither of them moved to opposite corners, as protocol might suggest. Instead, they stood close enough that she could catch the subtle notes of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive that made her think of autumn evenings. "The Hartley team sent over their initial feedback this morning," Matthew said as the elevator began its ascent. Alexandra was particularly impressed. "That's wonderful news." Janelle smiled, genuinely pleased. "She seems very forward-thinking for someone from such a traditional family. She reminds me of you, actually." The words seemed to surprise them both. Matthew cleared his throat before continuing. "The way she balances respect for tradition with the courage to push boundaries." The elevator dinged at the lobby, and a group of employees waited to board. Janelle expected Matthew to step away, to maintain the professional distance his position demanded. Instead, he shifted slightly closer as others entered, his arm brushing against hers. The contact sent electricity through her skin. "Alexandra mentioned your lunch meeting tomorrow," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "The restaurant she suggested, Maison Laurent, they have an excellent crème brûlée." Janelle turned to look at him, struck by the casual intimacy of restaurant recommendations. "Are you a frequent visitor?" "They handle most of our client lunches." A pause, then. "Though I usually eat alone." The admission hung between them, weighted with meaning. Before Janelle could respond, the elevator arrived at the creative department's floor. She moved to exit, then hesitated. "I've never had their crème brûlée," she said softly. "Maybe I'll try it." Something flickered in Matthew's eyes. Warmth, hunger, possibility. "Let me know what you think." The doors closed between them, and Janelle stood for a moment, collecting herself. When she finally turned toward her desk, she found Regina, watching her with raised eyebrows. "So," Regina said, falling into step beside her, "want to explain why you're suddenly taking the garage elevator when your train lets you off at the lobby? I'm trying a new route to work." The lie felt obvious even to her own ears. Regina's smile was knowing. "And does this new route happen to coincide with a certain CEO's arrival time?" "It's not, we just happen to—" Janelle stopped, recognizing the futility of denial. "Please don't make this into something it's not. Honey, I saw the way he looked at you during the Hartley presentation, like you were the only person in the room." Regina's voice softened. "And I saw the way you looked back." Before Janelle could protest, Lauren from HR hurried over, clutching a stack of papers. "Janelle, I need your help with the company gala planning. We're thinking of doing a timeless elegance theme, given the Hartley success. Would you be willing to join the committee? The annual gala." Janelle had successfully avoided it last year, claiming a family commitment. But now, "The CEO always opens the dancing," Lauren continued, her eyes twinkling. "It's tradition." Regina coughed to hide her laugh, and Janelle felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'd be happy to help," she heard herself say. As Lauren rushed off, Regina leaned close. "Timeless elegance, huh? I know a great boutique for gala dresses, in case you want to make someone's jaw drop. It's just a work event." Janelle insisted, but her mind was already racing ahead to the possibility of dancing with Matthew, of his hand on her waist, of moving together to the music. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. From Matthew. Hale. Quarterly creative review meeting scheduled for 8:45 a.m. tomorrow. Location, CEO's office. Below the formal message was a personal note. The lobby elevator will be under maintenance tomorrow. Please use the garage entrance. Janelle bit her lip to hide her smile. Beside her, Regina peered at the screen and sighed dramatically. Just a work event, she mimicked. Right. And I'm the Queen of England. That afternoon, Janelle left work early to visit her favorite boutique. Just to look, she told herself, just to be prepared. But as she studied her reflection in the store window, she couldn't help wondering if Matthew would notice the way this particular shade of burgundy brought out the warmth in her skin. Not that she was trying to impress anyone, definitely not. But at 8:43 the next morning, she found herself in the garage again, heart racing, waiting for familiar footsteps and the promise of 5 minutes alone in an elevator with a man who made her feel seen in ways she never expected. Maison Laurent radiated old-world elegance, from its crisp white tablecloths to the crystal chandeliers catching afternoon light. Janelle arrived 10 minutes early, smoothing her silk blouse as the maitre d' led her to a quiet corner table. Alexandra Hartley was already there, looking effortlessly sophisticated in a tailored blazer. Janelle. Alexandra stood to greet her with European-style air kisses. I'm so glad you could make it. I hope you don't mind. I ordered champagne to celebrate our partnership. That's very kind, but I usually don't drink at lunch meetings, Janelle began. But Alexandra waved away her protest. This isn't just a meeting. I have a proposition for you. Alexandra's eyes sparkled with excitement. But first, let's order. The duck here is divine. As they settled into their meal, Alexandra steered the conversation away from business, asking about Janelle's background, her design philosophy, her experiences in Chicago. There was something almost familiar about her intensity. The way she leaned in when Janelle spoke, it reminded her of someone else's focused attention. You know, Alexandra said, swirling her champagne, when Daddy told me I needed to modernize the brand, I was terrified. Hartley's has been doing things the same way for so long, but your presentation, you understood exactly what we needed. The history of Hartley's is what makes it special, Janelle replied. I just wanted to help others see that tradition and innovation aren't opposites. Exactly, Alexandra beamed. Which is why I want you to come work for us directly. Janelle's fork clattered against her plate. I'm sorry. We're creating a new position, Creative Innovation Director, full creative control, substantial equity package, corner office. In our New York headquarters. Alexandra reached across the table, touching Janelle's hand. You'd be perfect for it? The room seemed to tilt slightly. New York, Creative Innovation Director. It was the kind of opportunity most designers spent their careers chasing. So why did the thought fill her with such unexpected dread? I'm very flattered, Janelle managed, but I'm happy where I am. Is it the salary? Because we can definitely... It's not about money, Janelle interrupted gently. I believe in the work we're doing at my current company, and the leadership. And there... She trailed off, thinking of early morning elevator rides and shared smiles over coffee. Alexandra sat back, a knowing look crossing her face. Ah, Matthew Hale. Janelle felt heat rise in her cheeks. Mr. Hale is an excellent CEO, she said carefully. He's also single, devastatingly handsome, and clearly smitten with you. I don't know what you mean, Janelle protested, but Alexandra just laughed. Please, I saw how he watched you during the presentation, and then yesterday, when I stopped by your office for those additional mock-ups. Alexandra's smile turned mischievous. Let's just say I recognize the signs. My last creative director left because we fell in love. She's now my fiancée. Before Janelle could process this revelation, A familiar voice cut through the restaurant's gentle murmur. "Miss Hartley, what a pleasant surprise." Matthew stood at their table, impeccable in his suit, but something was off about his expression. Beside him stood a stunning woman in her early 30s, her hand resting casually on his arm. "Matthew!" Alexandra rose to greet him. "What perfect timing! Have you met my sister Olivia? She's in town for the week." "We've just been getting acquainted," the woman, Olivia, said, her smile dazzling. "Matthew's taking me on a tour of Chicago's finest restaurants." Janelle felt as though she'd stepped into a parallel universe. She watched as Matthew pulled out a chair for Olivia at the adjacent table, his movements smooth and practiced. The perm woman leaned close to whisper something in his ear, and he smiled. Not the genuine smile Janelle had come to know, but something more polished, more public. "Isn't this cozy?" Alexandra said brightly, apparently oblivious to the tension. "We should all have dinner together while Olivia's in town. Double date." Olivia's eyes lit up. "Oh, are you seeing someone, Alex?" "Not me. Janelle here has been just focusing on work," Janelle cut in quickly. She stood gathering her bag. "Speaking of which, I should get back to the office. Alexandra, thank you for lunch. And for the offer, I'll give it serious consideration." She felt Matthew's gaze on her as she hurried past their table, but she didn't look back. She couldn't bear to see if he was still smiling at Olivia. The afternoon sun was harsh after the restaurant's dim interior. Janelle blinked against it, telling herself the stinging in her eyes was just from the light. Her phone buzzed. A message from Matthew. "The elevator timing might be difficult tomorrow. Maintenance issues." She stared at the words until they blurred. Then, with deliberate movements, she opened her email and began composing a response to Alexandra. "Dear Ms. Hartley, after careful consideration, I would very much like to discuss the Creative Innovation Director position." She didn't send it. Not yet. But saving it to drafts felt like insurance against her own foolish heart, a reminder that she had options, that she wasn't bound to Chicago, or its elevators, or its CEOs who apparently gave private restaurant tours to beautiful women. Back at her desk, Janelle threw herself into work, ignoring Regina's concerned glances. She had a gala to help plan, after all. And if she happened to Google job opportunities in New York during her lunch break, well, that was nobody's business but her own. The next week passed in a blur of avoided glances and carefully maintained distance. Janelle took the lobby elevator, timing her arrivals to miss the 8:45 window. Matthew stopped appearing in the creative department. Their only interactions came through terse emails about the Hartley project, each message stripped of the warmth that had characterized their previous exchanges. "He's been in a mood all week," Lauren confided during a gala planning meeting. "Made the accounting team redo their quarterly projections 3 times. Anderson nearly cried." Regina shot Janelle a meaningful look across the conference table. "I'm sure he has his reasons." "The Hartley implementation has been challenging," Janelle said neutrally, focusing on the seating chart in front of her. She'd deliberately placed herself at table 12, as far from the head table as possible. "Speaking of Hartley," Lauren continued, "did you hear about Olivia Hartley? Apparently she's been extending her Chicago stay. Something about exploring potential business opportunities." She waggled her eyebrows suggestively. Janelle's pen pressed so hard it nearly tore through the paper. She could still see Olivia's perfectly manicured hand on Matthew's arm, still hear the musical lilt of her laugh echoing through Maison Laurent. "The gala's in 3 days," Regina interrupted, clearly sensing Janelle's discomfort. "Shouldn't we finalize the music selection?" But escape proved impossible. As they left the meeting, Janelle nearly collided with Matthew himself, emerging from a nearby conference room. For a moment, they stood frozen, closer than they'd been since that last elevator ride. He looked tired, she noticed. The circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights, and his usual immaculate appearance showed subtle signs of strain. A slightly loosened tie, a faint wrinkle in his shirt collar. "Miss Brooks," he said formally, and the distance in his voice made something twist in her chest. "I trust the gala preparations are proceeding well?" "Yes, sir." Two could play at formality. "Everything's on schedule." He seemed about to say more, but voices approached from the conference room, including a familiar, melodious laugh. Janelle stepped back quickly. "If you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with Alexandra about the New York position." She hadn't meant to say it like that, hadn't meant to say it at all. But the words slipped out, sharp-edged and deliberately casual. Matthew's face went completely still. "New York position?" "The Creative Innovation Director role at Hartley's headquarters." Each word felt like a small victory and a deeper wound. Alexandra made a very generous offer. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by something that looked almost like anger. "I see. And you're considering it?" "It's an excellent opportunity." Janelle lifted her chin slightly. "After all, I should focus on my career advancement. Personal considerations would be unprofessional." The implied accusation hung between them. Matthew's jaw tightened. "Of course. You should absolutely pursue what makes you happy, Ms. Brooks. If New York is where you see your future." "Matthew!" Olivia emerged from the conference room, her face lighting up. "There you are. Are we still on for dinner?" Janelle didn't wait to hear his response. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking a sharp rhythm against the marble floor. She made it all the way to the women's restroom before her composure cracked. Regina found her there 10 minutes later, carefully reapplying her makeup. "Want to tell me what that was about?" "Nothing." Janelle's hands were steady as she recapped her mascara, "Just discussing business." "Uh-huh. And I suppose you're actually considering that New York job." "Why shouldn't I?" Janelle met her friend's eyes in the mirror. "It's a fantastic position. Better title, better pay, better—" She trailed off. "Better distraction?" Regina suggested. Gently, "I don't need a distraction from anything." "Really?" "Because from where I'm standing, you and the boss are doing a terrible job of hiding how much you miss each other." Janelle turned to face her friend. "He's having dinner with Olivia Hartley. And you're interviewing for jobs in New York." Regina crossed her arms. "You know what I think? I think you're both too proud and too scared to have an actual conversation. So instead, you're doing this elaborate dance of making each other jealous. And neither of you is happy about it." "It's not like that," Janelle protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "No? Then why did he spend 20 minutes in his office after your little hallway encounter, staring at nothing? Lauren told me he cancelled all his afternoon meetings." Something that felt dangerously like hope fluttered in Janelle's chest. She squashed it firmly. "It doesn't matter. The gala's in 3 days, and then what? You're running away to New York because you saw him with another woman." "Once. I'm advancing my career." "Right." Regina's voice softened. "Just promise me something. Before you make any decisions, talk to him. Actually talk to him, not this passive-aggressive business meeting nonsense. You owe yourself that much." Janelle turned back to the mirror, adjusting her blazer. "I'll think about it." But that evening, alone in her apartment, she found herself pulling out the burgundy dress she'd bought for the gala. It was beautiful, elegant but daring, with a sweetheart neckline and a slit that climbed just high enough to turn heads. She'd bought it thinking of Matthew's reaction. Now, running her fingers over the silk, she wondered if she should return it, buy something more conservative, more appropriate for a future creative innovation director. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexandra. Dinner was interesting. Olivia's flying back to New York tomorrow. Something about a crisis at the office. Still want to discuss that job offer? Janelle stared at the message for a long moment. Then slowly she hung the burgundy dress in her closet. 3 days until the gala. 3 days to decide if she was running towards something in New York or just running away from the possibility of getting hurt in Chicago. 3 days to find the courage to have an honest conversation with Matthew Hale, or to accept that some elevators were better left untaken. The Chicago Symphony Center's grand ballroom sparkled with thousands of tiny lights, transforming the space into something out of a fairy tale. Janelle stood in the entrance, taking a moment to appreciate how the timeless elegance theme had come together. Crystal centerpieces catching the light, vintage timepieces artfully arranged as decoration, and white roses everywhere, their scent subtle but enchanting. "You're going to break hearts tonight," Regina whispered, appearing beside her in a sleek emerald gown, "including your own, if you're not careful." Janelle smoothed her hands over the burgundy silk. She'd decided to wear the dress after all, though she'd spent the entire car ride second-guessing herself. Now, seeing the appreciative glances from early arrivals, she felt a spark of confidence return. "Have you seen him yet?" Regina asked. "No, but—" Janelle's words cut off as she caught sight of Matthew across the room. He stood near the stage in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, deep in conversation with the board chairman. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. The moment stretched between them like a thread pulled taut. Even from across the room, Janelle could see the way his expression changed, the slight parting of his lips as he took in her appearance. Then someone stepped between them, breaking the connection, and Janelle released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lauren's voice came over the speakers, "please take your seats. Dinner will be served shortly." Janelle made her way to table 12, grateful for the distance from the head table. She focused on her meal, laughing at her table-mates' jokes and steadfastly avoiding looking toward the front of the room. But she couldn't help noticing that the chair beside Matthew, traditionally reserved for a date, remained conspicuously empty. After dinner came the speeches. Janelle half-listened to various executives praising the company's success, her attention drawn instead to the dance floor being cleared. The CEO's opening dance was a company tradition, one she'd helped plan but somehow hadn't fully processed. The implications of until this moment. Matthew took the stage, commanding attention effortlessly in his tuxedo. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Before we open the dancing, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some exceptional contributions to our company's success this year." He began acknowledging various teams and individuals. Janelle tensed when he reached the creative department's achievements, but he mentioned only the department as a whole, his eyes never straying to table 12. "And now," he said, "as tradition dictates, I have the honor of opening the dancing. However, I'd like to do something a little different. This year." A murmur went through the crowd. Janelle felt Regina squeeze her hand under the table. "This year has taught me the importance of seeing things from new perspectives," Matthew continued, "of finding beauty in unexpected moments, and of having the courage to step out of our comfort zones." His eyes finally, deliberately found hers. "Ms. Brooks." The room went silent. Janelle's heart thundered in her chest. "Your work on the Hartley account showed us how tradition and innovation can dance together. Would you help me demonstrate that principle?" 200 faces turned toward her. Janelle sat frozen, feeling the weight of every gaze. This wasn't just a dance invitation. It was a public declaration, a challenge, a question wrapped in tradition and metaphor. Regina nudged her gently. "Breathe," she whispered. Janelle stood, the burgundy silk flowing around her like liquid courage. She made her way to the dance floor, aware of every step, every eye following her movement. When she reached Matthew, he extended his hand. "You clean up nice, Miss Brooks," he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. "You're not so bad yourself, Mr. Hale." She placed her hand in his, trying to ignore the electricity of his touch. The orchestra began playing, not the traditional waltz she'd expected, but a modern arrangement of La Vie en Rose. Matthew drew her close, one hand settling at her waist, the other clasping hers with gentle firmness. "I haven't seen you in the elevator lately," he said softly as they began to move. "I heard there were maintenance issues." She matched his steps perfectly, grateful for the dance lessons she'd taken in college. There weren't. His thumb traced a small circle on her waist. "I missed you." Janelle's breath caught. "You seemed busy. With Olivia." "Olivia," he said carefully, "spent most of our dinners talking about her girlfriend in San Francisco and asking me why I was being, in her words, an absolute idiot about you." They turned together, their movements synchronizing naturally. "Oh." Janelle felt heat rise in her cheeks. "And what did you tell her?" "That I was afraid." The admission seemed to cost him something. "When Alexandra mentioned the New York position, I thought perhaps you were looking for an escape from me." "I was." The honesty surprised them both. "But not for the reasons you think." The music swelled, and Matthew pulled her closer. Other couples had joined them on the dance floor now, but Janelle barely noticed them. All she could focus on was the warmth of his hand on her waist, the subtle scent of his cologne, the intensity in his eyes as he looked at her. "Have you accepted the position?" he asked, his voice tight. "I haven't decided yet." She met his gaze steadily. "There are complications, such as the fact that every time I try to imagine living in New York, all I can think about is whether their elevators arrive at 8:45. Something flickered in Matthew's expression. Hope, perhaps, or relief. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the music ended. They stood still for a moment, neither quite ready to let go. Then applause broke out around them, and reality rushed back in. They separated smoothly, maintaining professional dignity, but Janelle could feel the lingering warmth of his touch. "The garden terrace," Matthew said quietly as they bowed to the audience. 10 minutes. Janelle nodded almost imperceptibly, then made her way back to her table. Regina was practically vibrating with excitement. "That," she declared, "was not dancing, that was foreplay." "Regina, tell me I'm wrong." Her friend grinned. "Also, you might want to fix your lipstick before you meet him on the terrace, just saying." Janelle touched her lips self-consciously. "How did you—" "Please, I saw that look he gave you. If you're not on that terrace in 10 minutes, I'm handing in my resignation in protest." 9.5 minutes later, Janelle stood before the terrace doors, her heart racing. Through the glass, she could see Matthew's silhouette against the Chicago skyline, waiting. One step would take her through the doors, toward whatever lay between them, or she could walk away, keep things professional, accept the New York position, be safe. She reached for the door handle, burgundy silk swishing softly against her legs. Safety, she decided, was vastly overrated. The Chicago night spread out before them like a carpet of stars, city lights twinkling against the velvet darkness. Matthew stood at the terrace railing, his back to the door, jacket slightly ruffled by the evening breeze. He turned at the sound of Janelle's heels on the stone floor. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. "I wasn't sure either." Janelle moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel his warmth, but not quite touching. The city stretched beneath them, a maze of lights and possibilities. "That dress," Matthew began, then seemed to lose his train of thought. He cleared his throat. "You look stunning!" "Thank you." She smiled slightly. "Regina helped me pick it out, though I almost returned it after Maison Laurent." Matthew's hands tightened on the railing. "I behaved badly that day. When I saw you with Alexandra, looking so comfortable, so intimate, I let jealousy cloud my judgment." "Jealousy?" Janelle turned to face him. "Of Alexandra?" She could offer you everything I couldn't, a clear path forward, no complications, no office politics to navigate. He met her gaze. And then she mentioned New York, and I thought I was losing you before I ever really had you. The admission hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Inside, the music played on, muffled by the glass doors, creating a cocoon of privacy around them. So, you decided to parade Olivia around? Janelle couldn't quite keep the edge from her voice. Olivia, Matthew said with a self-deprecating laugh, spent most of our time together showing me pictures of her girlfriend and telling me I was being an idiot. She said, and I quote, "For someone who runs a successful company, you're remarkably bad at reading signals." Despite herself, Janelle felt a smile tugging at her lips. She's not wrong. No, he agreed, turning to face her fully. I am an idiot. I've spent weeks orchestrating elevator meetings just to see you smile when I should have simply told you how I feel. Janelle's heart skipped. And how do you feel? Instead of answering immediately, Matthew reached out and took her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. The touch sent shivers up her arm. I feel like I've been sleepwalking through my life, he said finally. Running the company, maintaining appearances, doing everything right but feeling nothing real. Then one morning, I saw a woman fixing her. Dress in my car window, completely unself-conscious, completely herself, and something woke up inside me. He stepped closer, and Janelle caught the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the night air. I feel alive when I'm with you, Janelle, even in those brief moments in the elevator, even across a crowded conference room. You make me feel real in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Matthew, she started to speak, but he wasn't finished. I know I have no right to ask you to stay. The position in New York is an incredible opportunity, and you deserve every success. But before you decide, I need you to know that I'm in love with you. Completely, impossibly, inappropriately in love with you. The world seemed to stop. Janelle was acutely aware of everything. The warmth of his hand holding hers, the distant sound of music, the way his eyes searched her face for a response. The New York position, she said carefully, comes with an impressive corner office. Matthew's hand tightened slightly on hers, but he nodded. I understand. But, she continued, stepping closer, I've become rather attached to a certain elevator, especially around 8:45 in the morning. Hope bloomed in his expression. Janelle, I tried to imagine myself in New York, she said, reaching up to touch his face. But every scenario felt wrong because you weren't in it. I don't want a corner office in Manhattan. I want morning elevator rides and shared smiles over coffee and the way you look at me when you think no one's watching. His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. And how do I look at you? Like I'm the most fascinating design project you've ever seen, she smiled. Like you can't quite believe I'm real. You are fascinating, he murmured, leaning closer, and sometimes I'm not sure you are real, especially right now, in that dress, saying everything I've been hoping to hear. I'm real, she whispered, her lips inches from his, and I'm in love with you too, you impossible man. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home. His lips were soft but insistent, one hand sliding into her hair while the other pulled her closer. Janelle melted into him, tasting champagne and possibility and the promise of countless mornings to come. The kiss deepened, and Janelle lost herself in the sensation of being held, being wanted, being loved. The city continued to sparkle around them, but she was aware only of Matthew, the solid warmth of his chest against hers, the way his hands trembled slightly as they cradled her face, the soft sound he made when she pressed closer. Eventually they broke apart, both slightly breathless. Matthew rested his forehead against hers, a smile playing at his lips. "We should probably get back inside," he said reluctantly, "before Regina sends out a search party." Janelle laughed softly. "She probably already has surveillance photos." "Let her." Matthew brushed another kiss against her lips. "I'm done hiding how I feel about you." As if on cue, the doors to the terrace opened, spilling light and music into their private world. Regina stood in the doorway, grinning triumphantly. "Sorry to interrupt what is clearly a very professional conversation," she said, not looking sorry at all. "But Lauren's about to announce the raffle winners, and your absence is becoming conspicuous." Janelle started to step back, but Matthew kept hold of her hand. "Let them notice," he said quietly. Together they walked back into the ballroom, fingers intertwined. Heads turned, whispers started, but Janelle found she didn't care. She was too busy watching the way Matthew's thumb traced circles on her hand, the way he couldn't seem to stop smiling, the way everything felt right in a way New York never could. "By the way," he murmured as they found their seats, "I had maintenance. They check all the elevators. They're running perfectly." "Good to know," she whispered back. "I'd hate to miss our 8:45 tomorrow." His answering smile was brighter than all the city lights combined. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of sunrise. Janelle stood in the parking garage at 8:43, her heart doing familiar acrobatics. Though for entirely different reasons now. The weekend had passed in a blur of shared meals, long walks along Lake Michigan, and conversations that stretched into the early hours. Now came the real test. Facing the office as a couple, she heard his footsteps before she saw him, and this time she didn't pretend to check her phone. Instead, she turned to watch Matthew approach, admiring the way his charcoal suit fit his shoulders, the way his face lit up when he saw her. "Good morning," he said, reaching for her hand as naturally as breathing. "Good morning." She squeezed his fingers, still marveling at how right it felt. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped in together. As soon as they closed, Matthew pulled her close and kissed her softly. "I've been wanting to do that since Saturday," he murmured against her lips. "We saw each other yesterday," she reminded him, smoothing his tie. "Exactly. Far too long." The elevator chimed at the lobby level, and they separated smoothly as others entered. Janelle caught sight of their reflection in the mirrored walls, she and Matthew standing close but professional, his hand barely brushing hers. The memory of another reflection in a car window months ago made her smile, but their arrival at the office floor quickly sobered them. Lauren was waiting by the elevator, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Mr. Hale, Miss Brooks, the board has called an emergency meeting. They're waiting in the main conference room." Matthew's posture shifted instantly, CEO mode engaging. "What's happened?" "Hartley's stock dropped 15% this morning. There are rumors about a hostile takeover attempt." Lauren lowered her voice. "Alexandra's been trying to reach you both." Janelle felt her stomach drop. The Hartley account wasn't just another client. It was her project, her vision. And now... "Get me Alexandra on the phone," Matthew commanded, as they strode toward the conference room, "and pull up all the latest market analysis." "Already done, sir. She's on line 1 in the conference room." They entered to find the board members gathered around the long table, faces grim. The financial news played silently on the wall-mounted screen, showing Hartley's plummeting stock price in angry red numbers. Matthew stepped to the head of the table, every inch the commanding CEO. But his hand brushed Janelle's back as she moved to take her seat, a small gesture of support that steadied her. "Put Alexandra through," he ordered, and the room filled with her voice, tense but controlled. "Matthew, Janelle, I'm sorry to ambush you like this, but we need your help. Reynolds and Blake is making a play for controlling interest. They're telling shareholders that Hartley's modernization efforts show weakness, that we're abandoning our core values. They're using our campaign against you," Janelle realized, her mind racing. "Exactly. and the board is getting nervous. There's talk of reversing course, going back to our old branding. Matthew, I need you to convince them it would be a mistake. And Janelle, Alexandra's voice softened, I need you to prove that tradition and innovation aren't enemies. Janelle looked around the table at the concerned faces of the board members, then at Matthew. He gave her a slight nod, and suddenly she knew exactly what to do. Standing, she moved to the presentation screen and pulled up the Hartley campaign files. Mr. Werner, she addressed the most traditional board member, do you remember what you said when I first presented this campaign? You called it modern? She clicked to the image of Thomas Carroll and his granddaughter. But look at this picture again. What do you see? A classic Hartley watch, he said slowly, and one of those new smartwatches. Yes, but what else? Janelle moved closer to the screen. Look at how they're sitting, the way she's learning. Toward him, the way he's showing her his watch. This isn't about old versus new. It's about legacy, connection, the passing down of values from one generation to the next. She clicked through more images. The reimagined logo, the social media, campaign, the sales figures that had started rising before the takeover attempt. Reynolds and Blake wants everyone to think we're choosing between tradition and innovation. But that's a false choice. What we're really doing is showing how Hartley's traditions are strong enough, valuable enough, to embrace the future without losing their essence. Matthew stepped forward. The numbers support this. Before this morning's panic, our campaign had increased brand engagement across all age groups. Customer loyalty metrics were up 12%. The market was responding positively to the blend of heritage and innovation. But the stock price, one board member began, is a reaction to fear, Matthew cut in. Fear that Reynolds and Blake is deliberately stoking. They want us to retreat, to panic, to abandon the very strategy that was working. If we do that, we prove them right. Alexandra's voice came through the speakers, stronger now. The Hartley family has always led through conviction, not fear. My great-grandfather didn't build this company by running from challenges. He built it by staying true to his values while having the courage to embrace change. Silence fell over the room. Janelle held her breath, watching the board members exchange glances. Finally, Mr. Werner spoke. What do you propose? For the next 2 hours, they worked. Janelle and Matthew moved in perfect sync, building on each other's ideas, strengthening their strategy. She watched him command the room with quiet authority, saw him weave her creative vision into a robust business strategy. Occasionally, their eyes would meet across the table, and she'd feel that now familiar flutter in her chest. When the last board member left, Alexandra still on the line, Janelle sank into a chair, exhausted but satisfied. We did it, she breathed. You did it, Matthew corrected, sitting beside her. That was brilliant, Janelle. I suppose this means I'm definitely not taking the New York position, she said with a small smile. Alexandra's laugh came through. The speakers. I figured that out at the gala when I saw you two dancing. Some things are more important than corner offices. After they ended the call, Matthew pulled Janelle to her feet and into his arms. I'm so proud of you, he murmured into her hair. Of us, she corrected, leaning back to look at him. We're better together, like tradition and innovation. He smiled, touching her cheek gently. Does this mean you'll have dinner with me tonight? To celebrate? She pretended to consider it. Will there be crème brûlée? From Maison Laurent, he promised. Though this time, I'd rather sit at your table. The workday was far from over. There were press releases to craft, strategies to refine, 1,000 details to manage. But standing in Matthew's arms, in the room where she'd first presented her vision for Hartley's future, Janelle felt nothing but certainty. She'd chosen right, not just about the campaign or the job, but about the man who looked at her like she was the most fascinating puzzle he'd ever encountered, and the most beautiful solution he'd ever found. 6 months later, Janelle stood before a familiar black Audi, smoothing her dress. This time, though, she wasn't using the window as a mirror. She was waiting for Matthew to finish a phone call so they could head to the Hartley Celebration Gala together. "The numbers look excellent," he was saying, his voice drifting through the open car door. "Yes, Alexandra, everything's ready for tomorrow's announcement. No, I haven't told her yet. It's supposed to be a surprise." Janelle smiled, pretending. She hadn't heard. The past 6 months had brought changes she never could have predicted. The Hartley campaign had not only defeated the takeover attempt, but had become a case study in successful brand evolution. Reynolds and Blake's strategy had backfired spectacularly, sending Hartley's stock to record highs. "Sorry about that," Matthew said, emerging from the car. He stopped short when he saw her, his eyes warming as they took in her appearance. "Oh, you look beautiful." "You're biased," she teased, reaching up to straighten his bow tie. "Completely." He caught her hand and kissed it. And proudly so. The drive to the Symphony Center was comfortable, filled with the easy conversation of two people who had grown into each other's rhythms. They discussed work, the new clients who'd sought them out after the Hartley success, the creative department's expansion, Regina's recent promotion to creative director. "Remember the last time we were here?" Matthew asked as they pulled up to the venue. As I recall, someone made a very public declaration by asking me to dance. Best decision I ever made." He helped her from the car, then paused on the steps. "Though I have to confess something about that night. Oh, I had maintenance disable all the other elevators that morning. I knew the garage entrance would be your only option." Janelle laughed. "I knew it. Regina owes me $20. She thought you just got lucky with the timing." Inside, the ballroom was even more beautiful than the company gala had been. Alexandra had spared no expense in celebrating Hartley's triumph and new direction. The theme was timeless innovation, Janelle's suggestion, and the decor reflected it perfectly, mixing classic elegance with modern touches. "There's my favorite power couple." Alexandra hurried over to greet them, resplendent in a silver gown. Her fiancé, the former creative director, followed with champagne flutes. "Ready for tomorrow's board meeting?" "Everything's prepared," Matthew assured her, though Janelle noticed him checking his pocket for what had to be the dozenth time that evening. "Good." Alexandra's eyes sparkled with something that looked suspiciously like mischief. "Because I have a feeling it's going to be quite memorable." Before Janelle could question this, the orchestra began playing. Not just any song, La Vie en Rose, the same arrangement from their first dance. "May I?" Matthew offered his hand, and Janelle took it without hesitation. They moved together on the dance floor as naturally as they had that first night. Though now there was no tension, no uncertainty between them, just the comfortable warmth of knowing exactly where they belonged. "Do you know what I thought about most during those early elevator rides?" Matthew asked as they swayed to the music. "How to avoid a workplace harassment lawsuit." He chuckled. "How much I wanted to see you adjusting your dress in my car window again. Not because it was awkward or amusing, but because it was the most genuine moment I'd witnessed in years. You were completely yourself, no pretense, no performance. It made me realize how much of my life had become a performance." And now, she looked up at him, heart full. "Now, I get to be completely myself, too, with you." The music slowed, and Matthew drew back slightly. Janelle's breath caught as he reached into his pocket. "I was going to wait until tomorrow's board meeting," he said softly. "Do this properly, with all the official announcements. But standing here, in the place where we first danced, I can't wait any longer." He dropped to one knee, and the room around them went silent. "Janelle Brooks," he said, opening a small velvet box to reveal a stunning vintage ring. "You taught me that the most beautiful things in life happen when tradition and innovation dance together. When the past and future find their perfect rhythm. You make me better, braver, more genuine. Will you marry me?" Tears pricked at Janelle's eyes as she recognized the ring. The same one from the Hartley advertisement, the one Thomas Carroll's wife had worn for 60 years. "Alexandra helped me track it down," Matthew explained. "Mr. Carroll said it was time for a new love story to begin." "Yes," Janelle whispered, then louder, "yes!" The room erupted in applause as Matthew slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her. Somewhere in the crowd, she heard Regina whoop with joy. "I love you," she murmured against his lips. "I love you too." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Though I should probably tell you the other surprise now. There's more? Tomorrow's board meeting, they're announcing a new position. Chief Innovation Officer, overseeing both creative and strategic development. Alexandra and I recommended you for the role." Janelle's eyes widened. "But that would make me be equal in the corporate hierarchy." "Yes," he grinned. "No more concerns about power dynamics or professional complications. Just us, building something extraordinary together." "Perfect timing," she said, pulling him down for another kiss. Later that night, they stood on their favorite terrace overlooking the city. The party continued inside, but they'd stolen a moment alone, just like they had 6 months ago. "I had the elevator maintenance team put in a special request," Matthew said, holding her close. "They're installing a commemorative plaque in Garage Elevator 3, where tradition met innovation and timing was everything." Janelle laughed. "You're ridiculous." "Yes," he agreed happily, "and soon I'll be your ridiculous husband." She turned in his arms to face him. This man who had transformed from the intimidating Mr. Hale to her Matthew, who could command a boardroom and still get nervous about surprising her with flowers, who looked at her every morning like she was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen. "You know what this means?" she asked. "What?" "We'll have to carpool to work. Think of all the elevator rides we'll save." His laugh joined hers, floating out over the Chicago skyline. Below them, the city sparkled like scattered stars, each like a story waiting to be told. But their story, the tale of a shy woman, a car window, and a love that redefined corporate tradition, that one was just beginning its next chapter. And the timing, as always, was perfect. The end. Thanks for watching to the end. Did you like the story? Tell us what you thought in the comments below. We want to know what you think. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe now for more exciting stories you won't want to miss. Activate the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. See you in the next story. See you there.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment, every detail in the story has brought you emotions, thoughts, and maybe a little joy or motivation. Thank you for spending time with us, and hope that the next stories will continue to accompany you and touch your heart.